Well, just moments ago, the Commission on Presidential Debates announced the debate between President Trump and Joe Biden next week will be held virtually.
Yeah, it comes amid concerns over the president's COVID-19 diagnosis. Joining us this morning, the chair of Oakland University's Political Science Department, David Dullio. Of course, we want to get to the VP debate last night, but let's start with that. Not really a huge surprise that they're changing the format.
No, not at all. Given the president's positive COVID test, I think it was almost predictable to go this route. I imagine, however, that the president's team fought at the start over this. I think that he enjoys being in the same room with his debate opponent, but it was probably too much to overcome that COVID positive test.
Dave, is that the biggest talking point here next week for Joe Biden? Look at what this virus has done. We can't even debate each other in person. Will they use that to their advantage?
Oh, I think he'll try without a doubt. I think that's, and you saw a bit of that last night too, in terms of focusing on coronavirus, focusing on the response to COVID-19 from Kamala Harris, and I think you'll see it again next week with Joe Biden.
Speaking of last night's debate, it was a lot more civil. We got a little more policy, but we also got a lot of the candidates for VP ignoring the actual questions and kind of just going off on their own with their answers. As a voter, to me, that is extremely frustrating.
Oh, I'm sure it was annoying to a lot of voters out there. And I would say that element of last night was what we expect from these things, or what we've seen from them in the past. It's often the case that the candidates pretty much ignore the question that's asked and say whatever they want. And while that might be frustrating to voters, it's what the campaigns want, right? The professional campaigners would call that message discipline.
When you look at a debate like last night, it is tough typically for the vice presidential debate to be a huge news cycle event the next day. There's always a couple sound bites that I think the news is looking for, but in this case, when the biggest kind of part of the night was the fly that landed on the vice president's head, and then you have today that the next debate is going to be virtual. Is this already in the rearview window?
Well, I think that you're right, Jay, that it's often difficult for the VP debate to move the needle much, if at all. I do think that this one had heightened importance, however, for a couple of reasons. One, because of President Trump's positive test, and frankly, the age of both of the men at the top of the ticket. They will both be the oldest person to take the oath of office on January 20th of 2021. So the chances of one of these two individuals from last night taking the helm is increased. How much it's increased is not for me to say or for me to guess, but it's increased without a doubt. And I think, too, that it was an audition in some respects for 2024. Yes, we're even looking ahead 4 years from now.
Very true. I'm hearing that a lot this morning. That particular question, though, when asked by the moderator if it had been discussed what would happen or if there was some agreement in place should the president not be able to fulfill their duties, also a question that neither one of them really answered.
Right. That was one of several that they ignored the question and gave the response that frankly they probably had in the can. And I think that it was more important for Senator Harris on that question, given that she is relatively less known across the country than the sitting vice president. And she used that as an opportunity to, whether it's introduce herself to some voters, reintroduce herself to some voters. She went through what she and Joe Biden believe are her qualifications to serve not only as vice president, but as president.
David, Pence really pushed hard on trying to get an answer on if, the Supreme Court nomination goes through here before the election. Will Democrats push to, as they say, pack the Supreme Court after the election if, of course, Biden wins? No one wants to answer that question. Why is that dangerous to answer that question?
because packing the court is unpopular with the American public. And the Biden-Harris ticket is in maybe a bind here, right? The progressive wing of the Democratic Party wants them to say, absolutely, we will pack the court, as maybe retaliation for rushing through or pushing through the nomination that's currently on the table. But middle America doesn't like that so much.
One more question. We're running out of time, but just want to end on this. Any big gaffes last night, or what was your one takeaway moment from the VP debate?
I think that's a great question. I would say no on the gaffes. I think both really performed as expected, right? Pence was calm and smooth. Harris showed her prosecutorial roots. I think one takeaway for me is in one word, and it's contrast. They did throughout the evening really lay out the differences between Trump and Pence and Biden and Harris.
The great professor, thank you as always for spending time with us. We know we're going to see again much more over the next month.
Sounds good, Jake.
And we'll be right back with much more Fox 2 News Morning.